afternoon, everyone. My name is Isfundiar Kasuri, and I am an avid technologist, and I am a believer in the idea that technology can and should be used to create social impact in society. I am joined on this panel today by people that represent a kaleidoscope of opinion and who have been associated with the notion or the idea, the developing and evolving ideas around cybercrimes. We have two policymakers. We have a senior law enforcement officer who is focused on service delivery, and a citizen activist who is well known to all of us. We will focus our discussion not just on the question of whether the internet is media for the people or whether it is a breeding ground for crime, but we'll focus on the issues pertaining to regular citizens, parents, students, and the regular citizens of Pakistan, and create some awareness or attempt to create some awareness about how cybercrime can impact your life, and if it does, what steps you might take to address it. And of course, the work that the government has undertaken to prevent people from being victimized by cyber criminals. And we'll take the discussion forward from there. I would just open by saying that I remember when I first sent an email, the year was 1992, and I was at university in America, and it was just a one-liner email. A year later, my wife, my fiancée at the time, and we entered a chat room. I was in the States, she was in Pakistan, and it was the first free opportunity we had to communicate with each other. Fast forward 10 years, I have a daughter. She was using some fantastic presentation software, and she was 9 years old. And I said, "How did you do this? I just don't understand. I can't do this even now." And she said, "Well, Father, you adapted to technology. I was born into it." And so, the realization dawned on me that, it was one of various occasions when it did, that things are really changing the way in which people interact with each other in their daily lives. That is changing. Today, we pay our bills using an online banking application. We do our shopping online. We get our food delivered to our homes online. And pretty much our lives, the daily functioning of our lives has transferred itself to a large extent into a digital device, one that I'm sitting here using right now to moderate this discussion as well. Clearly there are implications, and one of those implications, the one we are going to discuss now, has to do with the fact that since so much of our life is now being transacted through a cell phone or a digital device, it follows that criminal activity will also move to those digital devices. And so today we are going to discuss that, and I would like to open the discussion with my first question to Senator Ayesha Raza Farooq, who was instrumental in the early days, 2013 and beyond, with the development of legislation. The legislation you may know of is the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act of 2016. That was the first formal legislation that we passed. She was a part of that. And so, Senator, I would ask you, in retrospect, on your insights into the process of developing this legislation, how it has worked out, and what challenges you feel are still to be overcome.
Thank you, Isfundiar. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A very good afternoon and assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me to this very important forum. So before I begin and give you a background of how the first law that was passed in Pakistan to prevent electronic crimes was developed and how it came into being, let me just say at the outset that that I think technology or the internet is a common good. And technology is certainly now being used as a tool. So where you have both good and bad actors, it's a huge advantage. It's a platform that is giving students, providing them easy access to knowledge, is giving our young girls, women, to work from their safe homes, to access e-commerce platforms, so giving them economic independence, financial empowerment. It at the same time has increased the accessibility of the internet, so has its access increased to the bad actors out there also. And thus Pakistan felt this dire need, just as globally other governments were facing a need to regulate cyberspace, to regulate electronic crimes. Pakistan came up with the first act in 2016 called the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act. It was provides you a comprehensive legal framework, defines various kinds of electronic crimes that exist out there. It nominates the the FIA as the investigative agency for all kinds of electronic crimes. So this was the first time that we started formally talking about the risk of cyber threats, cyber security. In Pakistan, your most vulnerable groups, such as women politicians, women journalists, have been directly threatened and disproportionately faced cyber threats, cyber bullying, cyber stalking. There are very famous cases you must be aware of where Asma Shirazi, a well-renowned journalist, Gharida Farooqi, was facing these cyber threats there. And thus, despite all that's said about the PICA law, of how maybe it gives too much powers to some law enforcement agencies, I think it's important that we discussed, and these laws need to evolve and be improved as we move around. So it definitely requires constant monitoring by the Parliament as an oversight body here. It requires oversight by the civil society organizations and all citizens of Pakistan to come forward to help the government in creating awareness around cyber crimes, improving digital literacy, which through your forum right now, the Beacon House School can include that in their curriculum at a very young age, so that when young people access the internet, they're aware of the risks out there, the privacy content, flags that they should recognize and stay away from. And as the discussion goes on, I'll probably talk about what all from the government's point of view we certainly need to do to improve the law's implementation. We are a heavily legislated country, but unfortunately implementation of all kinds of laws that we have, including PICA, has been far from desirable. So I'll admit there that although we've come up with a good law with good intentions, but just like all laws can be exploited, can be misused, PICA may have been misused to some extent, but there's a need to correct that, to improve on that, for the government to allocate more resources in building capacity when it comes to our law enforcement agencies, the FIA, our lower judiciary, the forensics. So a lot of work is cut out for us, Isfundiar, but I'm an optimist and I do think that we are on the right trajectory and we need to increase the access of more and more people in the country to digital technology, internet access, but at the same time, on the other hand, have stringent regulations to make sure this untamed beast is regulated much better.
The first step is always the toughest, and one must take the first step. We understand that laws evolve and they evolve for the better. At least that's the idea. In terms of what cybercrime is, we've gotten one policy perspective. We'll get another one here briefly. Humayun Bashir Saab, you are on the hard end of this, which has to do with service delivery. The PECA law itself, the one that was enacted in 2016, and then the subsequent ordinance, they have been the subject of considerable discussion amongst human rights campaigners and advocates for women's rights, minorities, et cetera, et cetera. But before we get into any of that, there are a large number of people out there who don't exactly understand what types of crimes constitute cybercrime, how diverse that area is. And, I suppose we are at the School of Tomorrow conference. The perspective of women and parents and students, etc., and the kind of experience you've had in dealing with these types of complaints. What is cybercrime?
Thank you very much. I do hope we are speaking under Chatham House rules, because your first question about the ordinance and the law would require my very candid input, but that would also require the Chatham House rules to be in place if I am to keep getting my pay from the, from the government. Yes, so the activists would say PICA is a very harsh law. The law enforcers say it's a soft law. And that basically is the debate on the political side. However, if we just leave for a moment the political debate aside, which is just part of, which is just one section of the law, which is section 20, which is with regards to defamation, and that is where you could rope in the activists, the Twitter users, the Facebook, and then, of course, the question of what constitutes a journalistic activity. Is it just the channels and the papers, or is it, me speaking on Twitter, Facebook, and all that? That is one side of it. But the major portion of it, as you said, is the hardcore cybercrime. And what is that? Any crime which is committed in the cyberspace with the help of any electronic device or using an information system basically constitutes cybercrime. It's like the new urbanism. When societies came together, there was urbanism, there was a need for instituting control mechanisms. Similarly, it's the new urbanism, that's the new reality, and you need control mechanisms. That again, by the way, is a big debate that should internet be policed or should it not be. My personal view is it should be, because it has caused a lot of harm. And basically, it is the harm which is, which constitutes the crime. Now, what are those harms which we are talking about? And since we are talking to parents and children, one area, as we discussed, is the electronic and financial frauds. But, more important, they're big and equally important, but equally important is child abuse and pornography, blackmailing, cyberbullying, cyber harassment, and all these things which we keep on hearing and we keep on talking about. Now, what does this law do and what do we implement? The law has criminalized most of these acts. There are 26 penal sections in the law, out of which only 4 are cognizable. For just the information of our audience, cognizable is an offense where the police or the law enforcement can just go and make an arrest. And if it is a non-cognizable, then you have to go to the court, get the permission, and then arrest. So where I say that the law enforcer thinks it's a soft law is where I would want at least 10 of these sections to be cognizable, and none of them would be political. And we only have 4 in which you could just go in and make an arrest. These 4 are, of course, child pornography, abuses, blackmailing, and one related to financial frauds. Now, so what do you do if you are a victim of this crime? Or if your child is a victim of this crime? The first thing that I want to mention, and this is then with regard to blackmailing or generating some stuff on which you could be blackmailed, like an objectionable message, an objectionable picture, or something like that, and then child pornography, child abuse, and stuff like that. Before I go forward, addressing the parents, I just want to kind of make one point, and that is that consider all of us sitting in this hall, and except our elder Khurshid Kasuri Saab, I can say with surety, almost all of us who use social media or who use smartphones have at least once in their lives made a mistake. Made a mistake in the sense that we sent something we shouldn't have sent. We sent it to a person who was not a criminal. But that was our good luck. And therefore, we were not blackmailed. If your child, if your ward, or if you are being blackmailed, it is your fault, is really, really not on. It's not your child's fault. The quantum is such, everyone has made that mistake, they just were lucky. So that doesn't mean that an unlucky child or unlucky person should suffer. And why I'm saying this is because the first question that I have received as the cybercrime chief, repeatedly, from all the kids and girls and boys, is that, will you tell our parents?
Wow.
When they come to my office and they say, will you tell our parents? I said, no, we are here. We'll deal with it and consider us as your parents. And that is kind of the culture that we started introducing a year ago in the cybercrime wing. How do you approach us? The cybercrime wing of
What
FIA.
age groups are you talking about? I'm just really curious as a parent. When the child comes and says,
all.
don't tell my parents.
All.
Okay.
I mean, probably this is teenagers, this is just about 20s, this is like, of course, then married women as well. And every person would have a issue with privacy.
And if a student or a teenager asks you to not tell their parents, you are under no obligation to tell them.
No, I know what harm that can cause to that child. Okay. And therefore, even if I am under some obligation, I would weighing, that cost-benefit thing, I would probably not tell. Why? Because, the awareness to which we are going to come later is a really important subject in this whole area. And that is that our parents are not really aware, whereas they should have been the first stop for the child who is being blackmailed or exploited. The parents are to be the first stop, and they're not. Why? Because, blaming the child and taking out on him or her is probably the easy way out, and in a Pakistani context, kind of saves you from a lot of perceived beizati and the kind of thing. So in this is a very different area. It's a totally new area, and we need to realize that the sooner we get help, the better it will be. How you get that help? There are 4 ways in which you could approach us. I am sure most of you would not be aware of that. The first is you could make a complaint online, which is the FIA has a portal, which is complaints.fia.gov.pk. And we can just run these kind of on the tickers. The second is you could send an email to the FIA help desk, which is again helpdesk@nr3c.gov.pk. You could call the helpline 1991, or you could personally visit one of the 15 centers around the country. Now, I will just go ahead and answer your next question, why so many mediums and why not one window? So we are working on that one window, should be in place in another 3 months probably, in which you would then have just one online complaint. Once you have made your complaint, you'll receive a message which will say, please visit this and this center once. Why do you need to visit the center once physically? Is to make sure that your complaint is genuine, and we will be putting in some man hours investigating that. So we need to make sure that there's a person who's making a complaint, he has valid cause and some evidence to show us. Once that happens, an inquiry starts. In that inquiry, whatever happens, if the person is to be taken in, arrested, let's assume it's a question of somebody has kind of viral your objectionable pictures or is blackmailing with your pictures. Now that person will be traced, arrested, material confiscated, destroyed, and the case sent to the court. You would say this is very simple. No, of course there are problems, there would be delays. Just to put that again in perspective, we receive 100,000 complaints every year regarding cybercrime. I would say cybercrime in Pakistan is being underreported, and this should be around 300,000. But we are working then towards that. And only 15 centers to deal with that, and 450 persons to deal with with that kind of stuff. So yes, we are under-resourced, we are understaffed. What we are good at is technology. We have fair enough technology to kind of deal with this, to trace these people, to book them, and to make really good digital evidence and present it in the courts. The government has also established specialized courts for this, in which cases for PICA are tried. These are specialized courts and they only deal with PICA. So again, while closing, I would say that the most important thing is awareness and knowing that if anything happens, if you are being blackmailed, if you are being, bullied, if there is something wrong that is going on and you don't feel comfortable, please come to us, please go to FIA. We have complaint, we have specialists, we have psychologists in our centers who kind of deal with victims. And it's not just, it's not just the regular police station where you would go and, you will be treated, no, it's a reporting center. We have specialists, we have psychologists who deal with victims, and then we have counselors. If you're a woman, you'll be dealt with a woman. If you're as a man, you'll be dealt with a man. No one is allowed to kind of look at your material, and there are, safeguards built in the regulations which the government has made. So whereas it may be going slow, but it's not that we are standing at the knot.
Okay, well, that was very thorough. As a parent, again, the point about the child's lack of trust in the parent resonated with me. And even though that doesn't have anything to do with the law per se, but it's rather important, I think, in the 21st century where kids are born into technology, that the parents figure out ways in which to relate and build trust with their children to prevent such things from happening. Jibran, you are a practicing lawyer, and you have, in our conversations, told me that you have dealt with cases, cybercrime cases, some few of them in the courts in Karachi. Based on what you've heard from panelists so far and your own experience, what do you think are the meaningful ways or the most meaningful ways in which citizens can navigate the legal system as it relates to cybercrime to prevent themselves from becoming victims of it?
Assalamu alaikum ji. I hope you are able to hear me.
We are.
Without any interruptions. Thank you for inviting me for this discussion. हुमायूं साहब ने एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात की शुरू में. उन्होंने कहा अगर एक्टिविस्ट से पूछेंगे तो वो कहेंगे कि ये हार्श लॉ है, और अगर लॉ एनफोर्सर्स से पूछेंगे तो वो कहेंगे कि ये सॉफ्ट लॉ है. मेरे ख्याल में वो दोनों जो उनके ज़ावी हैं वो अपनी जगह मायने रखते हैं, मगर अगर आप किसी विक्टिम से पूछेंगे तो वो कहेगा कि ये इनफेक्टिव लॉ है. चूँकि जो आपने एक टर्म इस्तेमाल किया था सर्विस डिलीवरी, हम जब उस तरफ आते हैं तो मेरा अपना एक्सपीरियंस, और यकीनी तौर पे महदूद एक्सपीरियंस है, पाकिस्तान के सारे साइबर क्राइम केसेस तो मैंने नहीं हैंडल किए, बट जहाँ सर्विस डिलीवरी की बात है, जहाँ ब्यूरोक्रेटिक स्ट्रक्चर की बात है, जहाँ एग्जेक्टिव स्ट्रक्चर की बात है, वहाँ हमने लॉज तो बनाए हैं दौरे जदीद के लिए, मगर अपनी जो फेडरल इन्वेस्टिगेशन एजेंसी है उसको ना उस तरीके से इक्विप किया है, ना ट्रेन किया है, ना सेंसिटाइज किया है, और एक पूरे पाकिस्तान की जिसमें 22 करोड़ आबादी हो, एक वफाकी एजेंसी जो है वो 1 या 2 या 3 अच्छे अफसरों के ऊपर नहीं चलाई जा सकती. और ये हमने देखा है कि FIA की परफॉर्मेंस अगर आप देखेंगे गुज़िश्ता 8-10 सालों में जब से ये कानून आया है तो वेव्स आई हैं. कभी आपको कुछ सेंटर्स बहुत अच्छे रिस्पॉन्सिव होते हुए नज़र आए हैं, और कभी मामला बहुत ताख़ीर का शिकार हुए हैं. उसकी एक बहुत बड़ी वजह ये भी है कि हमारे यहाँ प्रॉपर रेगुलेटेड सर्विसेज के ज़रिए अफसरान नहीं आते. जहाँ तक मैं कराची साइबर क्राइम की बात करूँगा, मेरा जब भी किसी से रब्ता हुआ या मिलना हुआ, इन्वेस्टिगेशन ऑफिसर्स जो होते हैं वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पे हायर्ड किए लोग हैं, जिनकी क्रेडिबिलिटी भी और जिनकी कैपेसिटी भी दोनों डाउटफुल होते हैं. आई हैव माई सेल्फ पर्सनली एक्सपीरियंस केसेस जहाँ इंक्वायरी स्टार्ट होने में जो आप इनिशियल कंप्लेंट पे करवाते हैं और FIR दर्ज होने में 2.5 साल का अरसा गुजरा है. और वो एक सिंपल सी कंप्लेंट थी कि मैं एक लड़की हूँ, मेरी ईमेल आईडी मेरे नाम से किसी और ने बनाई जो कि मेरा साबका मंगेतर था, اور اس نے اس کو استعمال کرتے ہوئے میری جہاں مستقبل میں شادی ہونے والی تھی وہاں میری ریپوٹیشن ہارم کی. 1.5 سال لگا اس بچی کے لیپ ٹاپ کو اور موبائل کو اور جو اس لڑکے سے جو ملزم تھا جو لیپ ٹاپ موبائل لیا تھا فورینسک لیبارٹری میں جمع ہونے میں. اور جب فورینسک لیبارٹری وہ 1.5 سال بعد گیا تو انہوں نے کہا کہ یہ تو جی اب آن ہی نہیں ہوتا, اس سے ہم ریکور کیا کریں گے. ایک اور کیس میرے سامنے ہے جہاں سندھ کے اندر سوشل ویلفیئر ڈپارٹمنٹ جو گورنمنٹ کا ادارہ ہے 25 اہلکار خواتین ان کے نام اور نمبر جو ہیں واٹس ایپ گروپس پہ اسپریڈ کیے گئے ود دا ایلیگیشن کہ یہ جو ہیں سیکس ورکرز ہیں تو آپ ان سے رابطہ کر سکتے ہیں, ان کو تنگ کر سکتے ہیں. اور اس واقعے کو فوراً رپورٹ کیا گیا, میڈیا پہ ہائپ ہوا, مگر ایف آئی آر کرتے کرتے 2 سال لگے. اور ان 2 سالوں کے اندر جو ملزمان تھے انہوں نے وہ سارا اکوپمنٹ جو ہے اس سے جان چھڑا لی, کہیں پھینک دیا, دفن کر دیا, جلا دیا, ہمیں نہیں پتہ. میرے پاس سامنے یہ بھی انسیڈنٹ ہے جو کہ لیک آف ٹریننگ دکھاتا ہے کہ میں ایک بچی کی سائبر ہراسمنٹ کمپلین لے کے جب گیا ڈپٹی ڈائریکٹر کے پاس, وہ ڈپٹی ڈائریکٹر سائبر کرائم جو ہیں بعد میں ایک فراڈ کے کیس میں خود گرفتار ہو گئے while he was serving as a ڈپٹی ڈائریکٹر. جب ہم اپنا کیس ڈسکس کر کے نکلے تو انہوں نے مجھے بٹھا کے اپنی طرف سے نصیحت کرنا چاہی, اپنی طرف سے ایک اچھی بات کرنا چاہی کہ دیکھیں جبران صاحب بڑے حالات خراب ہیں, ہمارے بچے بڑے ونڈریبل ہیں. دیکھیں میرے سامنے ابھی ایک کیس آیا ہے, ایک 9 سال کی بچی ہے جس سے اس کی بغیر کپڑوں کے تصویر جو ہیں سعودی عرب میں بیٹھے ایک انسان نے منگوا لی ہیں. یہاں تک تو بات ٹھیک تھی کہ وہ مجھے بغیر نام لیے ہوئے ایک فیکٹ شیئر کر رہے ہیں اور نصیحت کر رہے ہیں. اگلا جملہ ان کا یہ تھا, یہ دیکھیں تصویر جو اس نے بھیجی ہیں. تو میں نے ان کو روکا, میں نے کہا یہ آپ کیا کر رہے ہیں, ہاؤ ایم آئی ریلیٹڈ ٹو دس کیس اینڈ وائی شوڈ آئی واچ دیز پکچرز. تو کہیں نہ کہیں مجھے نظر آیا کہ کوئی کیپیسٹی ٹریننگ یا کیپیسٹی بلڈنگ ان کی نہیں ہوئی ہے. یقینی طور پہ سب سے زیادہ اہم ہے پاکستان میں جو کہ ہمارا ایک لیگل سسٹم بڑی مشکلات کا شکار ہے, ہمارا لا انفورسمنٹ سسٹم بڑی مشکلات کا شکار ہے کہ اٹ از بیٹر ٹو بی سیف دین سوری. تو جہاں تک اسکولس کی بات ہے, جہاں تک ایکیڈیمک انسٹیٹیوشنس کی بات ہے, دا فیو آف اس دا لکی ونز ہو گیٹ ٹو گو ٹو اسکولز اینڈ پراپر اسکولس جہاں پراپر ایجوکیشن ملتی ہے, وہاں جتنی اویئرنیس اس ٹیکنالوجی کے یوز کے بارے میں دی جائے, اور میرے خیال میں بیبی شارک کے زمانے میں آپ کو پرائمری اسکول سے ہی دینی چاہیے اس کے بارے میں ایجوکیشن کہ یوٹیوب کیا ہے, اس کو ایکسیس کیسے کرنا ہے, اور باقی پورٹلس کیا ہیں ان کو ایکسیس کیسے کرنا ہے, اور انفارمیشن شیئرنگ کیا ہونی چاہیے. اور یہ ہماری انٹرپرسنل کا, ہماری پرسنالٹی ڈیولپمنٹ اسکلس کا بہت حصہ بن چکی ہیں, کیونکہ آدھے سے زیادہ جو ہماری پرسنالٹی ہے وہ ہمارے ہیومن انٹریکشن کی وجہ سے ڈیولپ ہوتی ہے, اور اب آدھے سے زیادہ ہمارا انٹریکشن ہیومن جو ہے وہ ڈیجیٹلی ہو رہا ہے. تو بہت ضروری ہے کہ اسکول اس کے اوپر توجہ دیں, اور پہلے سے ہمارے جو نوجوان ہیں, جو بچے ہیں, ان کو بتایا جائے کہ کیا شیئر کرنا ہے, کیا چیزیں شیئر نہیں کرنی ہیں. اور اس کے بعد جہاں تک بات ہے لاء کی, اس میں بڑا ضروری ہے کہ ہم ڈبیٹ اس سے آگے لے کے جائیں کہ ہماری پارلیمنٹ نے کتنے اچھے قوانین پاس کر دیے, اور ہم ڈبیٹ اس پہ لے کے جائیں کہ ہماری ایگزیکٹو جو ہمارے الیکٹڈ نمائندے ہیں انہوں نے ہماری لا انفورسمنٹ ایجنسیز کو اکوپ کرنے کے لیے, چونکہ دیکھیے اگر ہمایوں صاحب یہاں بیٹھے ہیں, آئی ایم پریٹی شیور ہی از اے ویری سینئر ایکسپیرینس اینڈ کیپیبل آفیسر, بٹ ایون ہی نیڈز اے سالڈ ٹیم ان آرڈر ٹو امپلیمنٹ دا ڈیزائنز اور پلانز ہی وڈ ہیو. تو اس طرح کی ہائرنگ, اس طرح کی خود آپ کو بتائیں گے کہ کتنا ان ایکوپڈ اور کیا کہتے ہیں اسٹافنگ کی کتنی بڑی خامی ہے ایف آئی اے میں. اور جہاں تک سینٹرز کی بات کریں گے, نہ ہو سکتا ہے امپروومنٹ آ رہی ہو, مگر جہاں تک کراچی کا سائبر کرائم تھا 1 سال 1.5 سال پہلے تک کراچی کا جی پی او آفس کراچی کے سائبر کرائم دفتر سے زیادہ جدید لگتا تھا. پوسٹ آفس جو ہے ہمارا وہ ہمارے سائبر کرائم دفتر سے زیادہ جدید لگتا تھا ان ٹرمز آف ریسیپشن کا ہونا اور سروس ڈلیوری کا ہونا, اور کوئی آپ کی کمپلین وغیرہ سننے لائق ہو. اب وہاں پہ تھوڑی بہت رینوویشن کا کام شروع ہوا ہے. تو یہ ڈیفینیٹلی ایشوز ہیں. کبھی کبھی ایسا بھی ہوتا ہے ایف آئی کی ویب سائٹ پہ جو آپ کا آن لائن کمپلینٹ فارم ہے, وہ کمپلینٹ فارم ویب سائٹ جو ہے وہ چل نہیں رہی ہوتی, مینٹیننس کے لیے ڈاؤن ہوتی ہے. انفارچونیٹلی وہ بھی انسیڈنٹس ہوتے ہیں جو کہ نہیں ہونے چاہیے. اور پھر ہمارے یہاں ایک بڑے ایک عجیب سی بات ہے کہ آپ جب آن لائن کمپلینٹ لیتے ہیں کسی سے, اس کے بعد پھر آپ کمپلینٹ کو بلاتے ہیں ایف آئی اے کے دفتر, اور اس سے وہی اسٹیٹمنٹ دوبارہ آن اوتھ لیتے ہیں. وہ اس اسٹیٹمنٹ کو آن اوتھ پہ لینے کے بعد ایک انکوائری لانچ ہوتی ہے. اس انکوائری کے اندر ساری تفتیش آلریڈی شروع ہو جاتی ہے, ایف آئی آر کوئی کٹی نہیں ہوتی ہے. اسی انکوائری کے ذریعے اگر کوئی نان کاگنیزیبل اوفینس ہے, جو کہ زیادہ تر جو آپ کے ہراسمنٹ کے اور بلینگ کے اور ان ریلیٹڈ اوفینسز ہیں وہ نان کاگنیزیبل اس میں آتے ہیں, یا مس یوز آف آئیڈینٹی کے, تو اس میں نقصان یہ ہوتا ہے کہ ملزم کو موقع مل جاتا ہے, بیکاز ایف آئی آر تو ہے نہیں کہ وہ جا کے بیل کرائے. So he can very well choose not to come to the FIA center, not to answer the notices. He can very well have the opportunity to get rid of that equipment which he may have been using and try to destroy the evidence. तो ये जो हमारा एक मैकेनिज्म है इंक्वायरी और FIR का, इसको भी मेरे ख्याल में थोड़ा रिवाइज करने की ज़रूरत है, वो बेहतर होगा. और जहाँ तक आपके टॉपिक की बात है कि जी एक मीडियम फॉर द पीपल बट इज इट द ब्रीडिंग ग्राउंड फॉर क्राइम. देखिए, कोई भी मीडियम कभी भी किसी चीज़ का ब्रीडिंग ग्राउंड नहीं होता. हमारा माशरा ब्रीडिंग ग्राउंड है क्राइम का. हमारे माशरे के अंदर जो हमारी अखलाकी, समाजी, सियासी कदरें हैं, जो कानून का निज़ाम है, उसकी वजह से क्राइम फैल रहा है. वो जेंडर बेस्ड क्राइम हो या वो क्लास बेस्ड क्राइम हो, उसकी वजह से क्राइम फैलता है. टेक्नोलॉजी इज़ जस्ट अ मीडियम. अब हमने टेक्नोलॉजी अडॉप्ट बहुत जल्दी की है, उसकी तरफ बहुत जल्दी हम गए हैं, मगर उसका इस्तेमाल सही से जो है उस पर हमने गौर नहीं किया है, और उससे अपने आप को महफूज कैसे रखना है उसके गलत इस्तेमाल से, और हम पे कोई उसको इस्तेमाल करते नुकसान ना पहुंचाए, उसके हवाले से अवेयरनेस जो है वो नापैद ना होने के बराबर है. और अनफॉर्चुनेटली चूँकि हमारे मीडिया चैनल्स के ऊपर सोशल मोबिलिटी या सहाफ़ियों के पास है या सियासतदानों के पास है और तीसरे नंबर पे सिविल सोसाइटी के पास है, तो पैका की भी जो सारी डिस्कशन है वो इन 3 सेक्टर्स के इर्द गिर्द घूमती है कि पैका का कौन सा सेक्शन सहाफ़ियों को तंग कर रहा है, कौन सा सियासतदानों को तंग कर रहा है और कौन सा एक्टिविस्ट को तंग कर रहा है. पाकिस्तान की कसीर तादाद ना सियासतदान है, ना सहाफ़ी है और ना एक्टिविस्ट है. तो पैका के बारे में मेरे ख्याल में डिबेट इस पे फोकस करें कि ऑर्डिनरी सिटीजन्स को ये आम लाइफ के अंदर लॉ कैसे प्रोटेक्ट कर रहा है और कैसे नुकसान पहुंचा रहा है. यस, हमारे यहाँ फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच के मसले हैं, यस हमारे यहाँ फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन के मसले हैं, जर्नलिज्म के लेके मसले हैं, मीडिया सप्रेशन को लेके मसले हैं, वो अपनी जगह डिबेट है. बट मेरे ख्याल में जो आम इंसान के मसाइल हैं, वो टेक्नोलॉजी हो या कोई और शुबा हो, वो तो डिस्कशंस में आते ही नहीं है अनफॉर्चुनेटली.
Okay. Objection sustained. Obviously the follow-up is going to go to the gentleman in the hot seat, and then we'll come back to policy here. Just some facts. In 2021, the FIA received 102,356 complaints, more than double the year before that. As Humayun Saab suggested, there might actually be 3 times that many. Of those complaints received, only 15,932 passed criteria for initiating inquiry, resulting in 1,202 cases being registered. Beyond the numbers, people I spoke to, Nigadad and Osama Khilji included, they pointed out a few things that have been alluded to here. I will also go through them quickly so you can respond. That the FIA is acutely under-equipped, and because it is only located in the largest cities, it is difficult for people to access and go there. Of course, there are internet-related issues in the rural areas of Pakistan. We are still trying to gain internet access for many. The low number of complaints, it is said, reflect a cumbersome bureaucratic process that has yet to be streamlined. And this is especially for women and children and minorities, and we'll come to you on a policy level on that as well. And then, of course, there is the perceived lack of capacity of FIA officials to interact with the court system itself, perhaps lack of seriousness at some level, or just a disinterest in going. And then the idea, of course, that is pushed by people, but regarding the use of the PECA laws as a tool of oppression, but sustaining what Jibran said, we won't focus on that so much. To what extent do you recognize these challenges, and what is the FIA doing to address them?
I think I kind of made that point early on, that we receive more than 100,000 applications, and we have 457 people to deal with that. Jibran Saab very rightly mentioned that those people are on contract. So yes, that is the process that is going on. The project for establishing the cybercrime wing was introduced a few years ago, probably started in 2008, and then subsequently, there's another project that kicked in, which means that there were specialist qualifications introduced for hiring people. So those were not like the regular constables that you hire but they all have like different cyber and web-related qualifications in which they are hired. So they were hired in a project. Their first phase has become permanent, and then the next two phases are still in the phase. Now this is purely administrative thing, are in contract who will be kind of phased through and through FPSC into a regular FIA cadre. Yes, they are very few in number. They need better training. And FIA in this sense, for this, needs a lot more resources. Now that doesn't mean that we stop working, or that doesn't mean that the crime should not be reported. Again, there are problems when people come. They face problems. If you have 100,000, more than 100,000 applications and just 457 people to deal with that, there will be a priority.
Fair enough.
Which would be, you called me. I'll be blunt about this. You called me, and that application went higher on that priority list, or something happened, or the government took notice, or it was highlighted in the media, or it was highlighted by some activist, or Jibran Sahab took the matter up, and then yes, it would be prioritized. That is problem of the sheer numbers. We are doing our best to handle that, but not everything is hunky-dory on that. That's just the sheer number and resources. Then you just have 15 centers. Gilgit, almost nil reporting, because people who are not living in Gilgit city and in far-flung areas don't report because they have to visit. And I'll come to that as well. Should you visit or should you not? And then same goes for Gawadar. There is a center in Gawadar, and there is no one, kind of very few complaints going to Gawadar. Interestingly, there are areas which were closer to Quetta and were administratively under Gawadar, or closer to Karachi and then administratively with Gawadar. We adjusted those kind of as far as we could facilitate. So the proposals are of course afoot, and it is the government then again which together with FIA will be establishing, extending these centers to all the cities. Right now you have just kind of 5 centers in Punjab, which is not at all enough. But it's kind of a work in progress, and it will expand. Just one question about the personal visit. That again is a big question. One example, regular policing, when you receive a call on 1-5, more than 50% are hoax. And they are not reporting crime or something. That doesn't mean that you don't respond to them, but then it takes up a lot of your time. This visit is to ensure that you have a cause, and that you are a person, and you have a cause. And it's not something automated or something, just you put us, after someone. So there is this requirement, and also necessitated by law. If you're going to register an FIR, those requirements are under the law as well. You would have to make that one visit. Actually, as our system works, if there is an FIR, you probably would be making more than one visits. So yes, we are dealing with that as well, we are dealing with cybercrime, but we need people to visit. We are trying to kind of find a way here, but as it stands, there are certain reasons for us to first to ensure that there is a valid claim, and there is some evidence, because we have very few, so we want to go after the cases where there is, kind of cause to go. As far as, just one comment, as far as internet being the breeding ground, I agree in a way with Jibran Sahab. There is a society, but then again, there are areas in which internet is a facilitator, and let me explain how. So there are just kind of 3 kinds of crime. One are cyber assisted, in which kind of cyber makes it easier for you. Think of a financial fraud. If I have to defraud you, I have to meet you, do something. If I am online, I could probably meet 5-7 people, do it more easily. Then there are cyber assisted enhanced crimes. I could do the same fraud on cyber with 1,000 or 100,000 people very easily. And then there are crimes which would not have been possible if there was no internet. Small example, your ID theft. So yes, it has a connection, and as I said, it's like a new urbanism. It's a new place. So there would be crime, and yes, it does exist. I'm not saying it should be, it's a reality. We have to exist. It is a lot of advantages. But crime would go side by side. Sir.
Excellent. We will move to Q&A in just a moment. In fact, we're obviously running short of time. We'll move to Q&A, and I will ask the first question of Senator Ayesha. We touched on the fact that the people who are perceivably most affected by cybercrime, women, children, students, minorities and all, that their cases do not make it to the top of the list. Most of the cases are to do with financial fraud and forgeries, etc. Nigat Dad has alluded to the idea that people are just not comfortable. As a legislator and someone who's dealt with this issue, what can we do to make people more comfortable with coming forward and taking advantage of the cybercrime laws? And then we'll move to the rest of the questions that are being asked.
I think, Isfundiar, there's a real issue, or there's trust deficit here between the citizens of Pakistan and our law enforcement agencies. So while we have through PICA assigned the FIA's cybercrime wing to receive complaints from all over the country, and Humayun's rightly pointed out capacity issues there, whether it's in terms of the number of field offices they have, the number of officers handling those complaints is concerned, whether they're gender trained, and whether they're able to make the female complainants comfortable and confident to share is a different story that we need to work at. But it's interesting that DRF's, Digital Rights Foundation's, a very interesting report that they published recently stated that a survey that they did said that 40% of all women on the internet have some time or the other faced some kind of cyber harassment, bullying, and so forth. So that is a very, very high figure. Now, the reason why they're not turning up and complaining about it, I think is what we need to work on. It's not that they're not important. The same report also says that 47% of women did not think complaining for cyber harassment was important. 70% are not aware that cybercrime, a law like PICA exists, which they can avail of. And then, yes, our patriarchal society, our customs, as Humayun correctly pointed out, makes women in our country less confident to come out and speak openly about it. Most of the time, it is cyberbullying or harassment is a result of relationships going bad. And this is where they are generally threatened with sharing, non-consensual sharing of intimate photos or videos. And this is where it's absolutely critical, as has been said by other speakers also today, that we focus on digital literacy. So it has to be a three-pronged approach. You work on prevention, you work on precaution, and you work on prosecution over here. And digital literacy, I think, is most inexpensive and most cost-effective here. And schools should include it in their primary education, where you tell students who are, and all of them, their toddlers have access to digital platforms and technology here, how to keep away, what kind of privacy settings to have, what to stay away from. And then legislation we need to improve. We are a resource-constrained country. And this is, I think, where we need to forge public-private partnership with civil society organizations and work together to handle complaints and build resource capacity of the FIA, of our lower judiciary, make them more gender sensitized to handle complaints better. We have a very, very low conviction rate. So of all the complaints that FIA has received, if you look at the number that were actually convicted, it is a very, very dismal proportion or ratio that we will see at the end. So yes, a lot of work to be done, but yeah, it's a good beginning that we're talking about it.
Excellent, excellent. Wajid Saab, your question?
You just have to ascertain that the person you are talking to is actually the person who has made the complaint. So you can make some arrangements that at least you would be able to speak to a person and you are sure that he is the person who is complainant, and you can ask a few questions and then you proceed. The other thing is, I'd also like to, if there's enough time, to list down what the other 6 areas that you would like to be covered to be cognizable offences under the law?
Thank you, sir.
Humayun Sahib, if we could do it quickly, there are other questions also.
We are looking into ways in which we could reduce your visits, but right now, frankly, it's a legal requirement as well. Secondly, you would have to visit to kind of give the evidence. Now, the evidence that you are giving would be pictures. Court of law would require a forensic analysis of your telephone, which you would have to present physically at the lab and then get it tested, and a report which is admissible in the court of law. So you would be visiting, and we do make sure, try to make sure that as much as we can we accomplish in your first visit. But we are trying to work out to reduce those visits and to kind of proceed more quickly. And secondly, if possible and located within Pakistan, at least I started that, we do have started reaching out to you as well. Like
Excellent.
going to your place.
Excellent.
सवाल कर लें जी। हुमायूं साहब, मेरा आपसे सवाल है, जैसा कि आपका एक तवील तजर्बा है पॉलिसी साइड पे भी, और आपने पढ़ा भी पॉलिसी को, और पुलिस की आपकी लंबी सर्विस है। ऑन वेरी सीरियस नोट, मैं ये सवाल है मेरा, बल्कि गुजारिश है कि FIA कवानीन के अंदर आप जब भी देखें तो उसमें ख़वातीन के ऊपर किसी ने कोई मैसेज किया और फिर उसने शिकायत की और फिर FIA ने बुलाया, और अच्छा उसमें मैंने ये देखा है एज ए पुलिस स्टूडेंट कि हमेशा वो ख़वातीन की साइड पे ही जाते हैं। अब अगेन मैं जेंडर की बात नहीं करना चाहता, लेकिन होता यही है। आप डेटा निकाल के देख लें कि शायद 100% कसूर जो है वो उसका बनता है, हालांकि एक्चुअली कुछ ना कुछ होता है तो राबता होता है, तो सिलसिला चलता है, लेकिन एंड में बेचारा कसूरवार वही बन जाता है। इसको पॉलिसी हवाले से देखने की ज़रूरत है।
आप ये कह रहे हैं कि खातून की भी थोड़ी सी गलती होती है लेकिन सारा मलबा बंदे पे गिरता है, ये कहना चाह रहे हैं?
Exactly.
मैं बिल्कुल जनाब, एज अ पॉलिसी मैं इसके खिलाफ हूँ कि खातून पे मलबा गिरना चाहिए क्योंकि उसकी गलती है। ये विक्टिम ब्लेमिंग के ज़ुमरे में आता है। मैंने FIA साइबर क्राइम की इस पे डायरेक्शन चेंज की कि ये बिल्कुल नहीं होगा। मैंने फ़र्ज़ कर लिया मैं एक खातून हूँ और मैंने किसी को अपनी तस्वीर भेज दी, ठीक है जी, तो चलें मैंने अपनी मर्ज़ी से भेज दी। जहाँ आपने उस तस्वीर का गलत इस्तेमाल करने की कोशिश की वहाँ पे मेरी गलती ख़त्म, आपका जुर्म शुरू। इन दोनों को इक्वेट बिल्कुल नहीं किया जा सकता। आपको सज़ा ही मिलेगी और ज़रूर मिलेगी।
Okay, moving along, we have very little time left. Jibran, I think we'll ask you to answer this. The question is from the audience with reference to cyber security. Does self-protection remain the first line of defense?
नहीं, वो तो जी रिगार्ड्स टू एवरीथिंग ना। कोरोना के अंदर भी तो पहले आप मास्क पहन रहे हैं ना, फिर बाद में आके आपको हुकूमत वैक्सीन लगाती है। तो तमाम चीज़ों के अंदर जो है वो आप अगर एक इंसान है, पढ़े लिखे इंसान है, तो आपको सेल्फ प्रोटेक्शन से ही जो है, प्रिजर्वेशन से ही काम चलाना है। एक पहलू मेरे ख्याल में जिस गुफ्तगू में रह गया, हमने पार्लियामेंट की बात कर ली, एग्जीक्यूटिव की बात कर ली, लॉ इन्फोर्समेंट की बात कर ली, थोड़ा जुडिशरी की भी बात कर लें। दौर जदीद के जो रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं उसके हवाले से हमारी जुडिशरी जो है वो दौर जदीद में नहीं गई है। अभी तक आर्काइक प्रिंसिपल्स जो हमने कॉलोनियल लॉ से लिए थे वो अप्लाई किए जाते हैं। फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल FIA के जो बहुत सारे कवानीन जो आम लोगों को मुतासर करते हैं उनकी सज़ा 3 से 7 साल के दरमियान है। और हमारे यहाँ एक जनरल रूल है अदालत के अंदर कि अगर आपकी 10 साल से कम सज़ा है या यू आर अक्यूज्ड ऑफ एन ऑफेंस जिसमें सज़ा 10 साल से कम बनती है तो बेल आपको एज ऑफ राइट दे दी जाती है। तो अमूमन ऐसा होता है कि इवन दो किसी खातून की ज़िंदगी बर्बाद आपने कर दी हो या किसी बच्चे की ज़िंदगी आपने बर्बाद कर दी हो, किसी आदमी की ज़िंदगी आपने बर्बाद कर दी हो थ्रू हरासमेंट, स्टॉकिंग और मिसयूज़ ऑफ क्या कहते हैं वीडियोस और फोटोज़, मगर जब वो अदालत बेल लेने जाएगा मुलजिम तो उसको फ़ौरन अदालत से इस बात पे बेल दे देती है कि जी सज़ा का जो अक्यूज़ है वो सज़ा 10 साल से कम है। तो ये जो हमारे पुरानी इंटरप्रिटेशंस है और अप्रोच है, मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि FIA के अंदर जितने भी ऑफेंसेस हैं सबकी आप डेथ पेनल्टी सज़ा कर दें या लाइफ इम्प्रिजनमेंट कर दें, बट अदालतों को अपना व्यू चेंज करने की ज़रूरत है कि गिवन द फैक्ट कि क्राइम साइबर स्पेस में हुआ है اور سائبر اسپیس سے مراد ہے کہ اس کرائم کا جو مشہوری ہے یا کسی کی اگر بدنامی ہے تو وہ بہت ایک سوسائٹی کی لیول پر ہوئی ہے. جوڈیشری کو بھی اپنا ایک اپروچ اس حوالے سے چینج کرنے کی ضرورت ہے, اور ہمیں بہت ریسنٹلی سپریم کورٹ سے ایک فیصلہ آیا ہے 2 رکنی بینچ کا, جس میں انہوں نے کنسیڈرنگ دا امپیکٹ آن سوسائٹی آف دیز کرائمس, انہوں نے یہ کہا ہے کہ جی ایون دو دا پنشمنٹ از لیس دین 10 years بٹ وی آر اسٹل گونا ڈینائی بیل, بٹ دیٹ از اونلی ون ججمنٹ. اس سے پہلے ایک 3 رکنی بینچ کا ڈیسیجن تھا جس میں انہوں نے بیل دے دی. تو جوڈیشری کو بھی اس حوالے سے میرے خیال میں تھوڑا اپڈیٹ ہونے کی ضرورت ہے. مزید میں اس میں یہ کہنا چاہوں گا جی کہ ہمارے یہاں اس بات کو ہم سامنے رکھیں کہ سوسائٹی جس طریقے سے ڈیولپ کر رہی ہے, جو ایک یوتھ بلج ہمارے میں آ رہا ہے, اور یوتھ بلج کے ساتھ ایک انٹریکشن ہمیں ڈیجیٹل اسپیس پہ ملتی ہے جو کہ ہمیں ریئل اسپیس میں نہیں ملتی. ہم فار موسٹ پارٹ ایک سیگریگیٹڈ سوسائٹی ہیں, اور ہم اکثر کچھ ایسے رولز اور قوانین اپنے اوپر لاگو کرتے ہیں یا اپنے معاشرے میں لاگو کرتے ہیں جو قدرت کے نظام کے خلاف بھی جاتے ہیں. ہم نے مطلب کہ انٹر مکسنگ آف دا ماسز کو جو وہ اتنا ٹیبو بنایا ہوا ہے, تو اس لیے جب ڈیجیٹل اسپیس کے اوپر کوئی ایسا انٹریکشن ہوتا ہے تو اس انٹریکشن کے اوپر بچے جو ہیں اپنے والدین سے کاؤنسلنگ بھی نہیں لیتے. A young female child may not be telling her parents that she's speaking to a person from the opposite gender online, because ہمارے یہاں گفتگو بڑی ٹیبوز ہیں, ہمارے یہاں یہ انٹریکشن ہی ہر سطح پہ ٹیبو سمجھا جاتا ہے. آپ کا اپوزٹ جینڈر والا دوست نہیں ہو سکتا, وہ خاص دوست ہی ہوگا. اس وجہ سے جب آپ ایک انسپروائز ماحول کے اندر انٹریکشن کرتے ہیں تو یو آر موسٹ لائکلی ٹو بی کمپلیٹلی کم انڈر انفلوئنس اور پرسویژن آف دا پرسن یو آر انٹریکٹنگ ود. And that's why also a lot of our young children, female children fall prey, even male children fall prey to such discourse. تو گھر کے اندر بھی ایک اوپن ماحول کریں. آپ نے خود اپنی حق حلال کی کمائی سے اپنے بچے کو ایک فون دلایا ہے, تو اس فون کے استعمال کے حوالے سے بھی بچے کے ساتھ کھل کے بات کریں. اور معاشرے کے اندر آپ نے دنیا میں ایک بچے کو پیدا کیا ہے, تو دنیا میں زندہ رہنا ہے, اس نے باقی لوگوں سے انٹریکٹ کرنا ہے, اس کو بھی اڈاپٹ کریں. ایجوکیشن جہاں آج کے دور کے اندر بچوں کے لیے ضروری ہے, وہاں پیرنٹس کے لیے اور اولڈر جنریشن کے لیے بھی اتنی ضروری ہے.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jibran, for that. I will close out the discussion by answering this question that was on the screen. It had to do with the steps that educators can take to prevent cyber crimes amongst the student body. It's pretty obvious. The first thing you need to do is you need to, develop some guidelines in collaboration with organizations like the FIA, the police, what have you, and then to educate parents and the students themselves on the methods of self-prevention that exist. But most importantly for parents in Pakistan, parents in schools of students that attend schools like Newlands and others, is to really educate themselves on what the children, the guardians of the future, are thinking, and how to keep their trust as they disappear deeper and deeper into these technological devices that form a part of their lives. I would like to thank Humayun, Bashir, Tarar Saab, Senator Ayesha, Raza, Farooq, Jibran, Nasir, and Senator Ali Zafar, even though he couldn't speak very much. Please fill in give us the feedback. We appreciate that greatly, and continue your day at the School of Tomorrow. Thank you.